Yes.
All right. Yep, that's it. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the New Media Show. My name is Todd Cochran. Of course, I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Rob Greenlee. Rob, how you doing?
I'm doing terrific, Todd. It's great to be back. Kind of in the, the interim break in podcast movement. It's kind of an interesting thing that they're doing, taking the weekend off and then coming back on Monday. Right.
So it's, I think from a virtual event, I've just been trying to judge, because we've got a booth. You guys do too. And I had a few inquiries coming in there, but not as many as I had hoped for. But I don't know. What are you guys seeing?
Yeah, that's been my experience with it too. It's definitely not as much activity as what we normally get at our real world booth, right?
Right.
Both of us, I think so.
Although
it's not a typical podcast movement event, in that way. And it doesn't feel as interactive. It's harder to connect with people.
Yep. Although we did do a live event. I know you guys did one as well, and we had pretty good participation on the live event, but we did it like we did this show. We pushed it everywhere. We just didn't put it to Podcast Movement Virtual. So we got, a lot of people are watching on Facebook, YouTube, and so forth. So, so we're going to do a couple more of those and see how it works out.
Yeah. Well, I got a couple of new things myself. I got, some over-the-ear headphones now, so I can actually hear you and not have a white thing hanging from my chest. So I upgraded just like you, Todd, because I know that's what you're doing.
Yeah. So all you got to do is learn to get it run down your back so you don't see it behind your ear, because we can see your cable just a little bit.
Oh, you can see it, huh? What's the secret there, Todd?
Most of the headphones come with a little thing that allows you to pull it up against the back of your head, and then it falls straight down. So.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you don't have that, then there's no way to keep those things tugged tight. But anyway.
Yeah. And I think I mentioned once before I have a lavalier here too, but I'm not using it for the show. But I do use it for other things that I do. Online. It depends on what it is. If I'm doing a podcast, I'm going to use the big boom mic. But yeah. So there's some.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, I don't know. You're probably going to say the same thing I was saying. The big news of the week happened yesterday.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So iHeart bought VoxNest/Spreaker. Yeah,
that kind of came out. It didn't come out in podnews.net. It just came out on the Podcast Business Journal and a lot of the radio rags, which I thought was interesting. They actually had the news of that first, which those, I think the Inside Radio folks had it and that kind of stuff. And I think it's because of iHeart's connection.
So what does that really mean for VoxNest? And what does it mean is iHeart now going to be competing in the podcast hosting game like Spotify is, or?
Well, it's a complicated story. Spreaker and VoxNest have always had a connection to iHeart. So for many, many years now, iHeart has always owned a small piece of Spreaker.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And they've the Spreaker development team has done development work for iHeart over the years. So there's been a strong collaboration between those two companies for many, many years. Actually, if you recall, Spreaker was the first platform to distribute their podcasts over to iHeartRadio.com.
That's true.
Yeah. So there's been a fairly close, relationship between those two companies for a long time, and in a lot of ways, this deal is just an extension of what they're already doing together, because Spreaker hosts most of the iHeartRadio radio stations, around the country on all their podcasts, right? So, and there's still kind of a divide there. There's the podcasts that are hosted on the part of the radio stations, and then there's podcasts that are owned and operated by iHeartRadio, which I believe are primarily all hosted on Megaphone.
Yeah, it's a weird dynamic there.
Yeah, and I don't expect that the Voxnest company or anything like that is going to see any big changes. It's just going to probably operate like it always has. It's just, iHeart basically owns the company now, and not just a small piece of the company.
So the question is, Rob, you worked over there for a while. Did you have any stock coming out of there? Did you make out okay on this, or can I ask?
I didn't get any stock in this transaction.
So when you worked over there, you didn't get any stock options while you were over there.
No, I didn't.
Shoot.
I know.
You missed a payday. Francesco should have gave you some stock.
There you go. Right. Well, I was there for 4 years, and I was the first U.S. Person.
Yeah.
For a couple of years for the company, because they started out of Europe, so they didn't have a U.S. presence or an office, which they do now in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
They have an office now in Brooklyn and staff in the U.S. because they acquired Blog Talk Radio.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that company came with some employees, and some of them are still with the company. And
so it'll be curious to see.
They have a U.S. presence.
It'll be curious to see how this mix is going to go down, because a lot of people don't even know that. Well, Blog Talk Radio is it still in existence? They still running it?
Yeah. No, it's still a product. They have a bunch of shows. It was one of those things that the service had its loyal customer base that loved to do live shows, and just like with Spreaker, that's one of its big differentiators is the fact that it does support live. The show has used Spreaker to do live shows over the years on that platform, because it is a nice thing to be able to go live if you want to, and I've always enjoyed it. I did the Spreaker live show for 2.5 years or however long it was. I don't even remember, but it was a fun platform. I enjoyed doing live, just like I enjoy doing live with you, Todd.
Right.
So it's I think the deal is it's not going to dramatically change anything in the space. It just brings those two companies closer together is really all it does.
And time will tell if there's a shakeout, if people are let go, and all that stuff.
I don't expect that to be the case, because Spreaker and Voxnest is a very different business in a lot of ways than pretty much anything else in iHeart's portfolio. As you can see, they acquired the content company. Was it Stuff Media? And they've made a big deal about that, creating original content, things like that. But like I said earlier, they host all that stuff on Megaphone.
Yeah.
So this is really more of an alignment with the radio side of iHeartRadio.
So the question is, does everything come off Megaphone and go on to Spreaker?
Well, I guess time will tell. I believe if iHeartRadio thinks that Spreaker Voxnest becomes as compelling or better, or
it's just weird that
maybe they'll stop using Megaphone. I don't know. It's hard to say.
It just seems to me kind of odd, but congratulations to that team.
Todd, if you look at it from the bigger picture, it seems like most of the music streaming platforms are acquiring podcast hosting platforms, aren't they?
Right.
So you can kind of draw some conclusions out from that, right? Is that we may see more of this in the future because of that trend line.
So I just wonder, though, for those that are on those platforms, if you're a podcaster on Spreaker, and to think that they're now really kind of on an iHeart property, I just wonder if perceptions are going to, some people are not fans of iHeart. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out.
Well, it is definitely the epitome of big radio. There's no question about that. They are the biggest radio network in the world. So if you're trying to move away from big radio, that would be. It depends on how you look at the medium. I do think that iHeart is doing some interesting things with podcasting, on their owned and operated programs that they're doing, and I guess this is just a pattern like we've seen with Spotify and others on the music streaming side, of the embracement of podcasting. But the way these radio platforms have embraced it is by acquiring podcasting companies.
Yeah.
So,
one thing that was popping up during our conversation on Wednesday, and it's something that I actually named the show today. How did I call it? I called it Perceptions. Let me get it up here. New Perceptions in the Podcasting Space. That's what I entitled the show today. Mm-hmm. And there was a number of people on there that think Spotify is king that were in our chat room. They were like, Spotify is podcasting now. And I'm just kind of was like, I thought it was an interesting perspective by a few podcasters that they would say that.
Right.
Knowing that it's not the case at all, but it definitely shows the influence that they're having on the space. If podcasters are thinking, they're the default standard now.
Yeah, it's hard to, maybe what's happening here is Apple's being seen as a legacy platform, and people are starting to view Spotify as what the future looks like. That is an interesting question, Todd. I mean, it's hard to say. I know that there's a lot of fans out there that would like to see, more of a equal split in market share in the market, and then you throw into the mix Android and what Google's doing, and some of the movement that I think we're starting to see with Google, coming into this, that there does appear to be more competitors to Apple's dominance that are growing in starting to do well. And I don't know if that's good for the space or not.
I don't think there's I think it's unfounded to be concerned, because
I tend to agree with that. Yeah.
From a podcast standpoint, now, I might have concerns as a company owner, but I think as a podcast listener, I don't use Spotify, but I know people that do, and I know people that use Pandora and for certain functions. So it's definitely bringing more bodies or more listeners to the space. The iHeart deal definitely will bring more exposure to podcasting. They've kind of finally figured out the tea leaves. It looks to me that, this is their insurance policy for radio. At the same time, though, I think that with all these, foreign platforms that are kind of ramping up, you brought up the point, what's next? This thing's going to stabilize, or will big folks that have been in the television space, will the AT&Ts and will the Verizons of the world who have bought up TV media properties now start looking to potentially look at podcasting?
Well, I mean, if you remember, Todd, Wondery is now on the sale block too. Who's most likely going to buy somebody like a Wondery? My guess would be some sort of a large TV studio, whether it be maybe Disney, ABC, who knows? I mean, I think that the potential of many different big media brands could get into podcasting, and I think even companies like Twitter and Facebook could be getting into this. I mean, we've seen Amazon get into it. And I think Amazon's going to probably surprise a few people in the future with what they're going to do too. Yeah. But, so competition may be really good, Todd. I don't know.
Gary says, I like the way Spotify visually presents my podcast better than Apple. But the problem, though, is
that's true.
There's really no way to subscribe to a show. There's no way to, they haphazardly will find you. It's a whole different. It's more of a linear, it's definitely not a traditional podcast experience. So maybe that doesn't matter to some folks, but you're not going to get on an airplane and listen to this podcast on Spotify.
Well, I think on Spotify the paradigm's a little different. People don't necessarily subscribe
Right.
to music, right?
Yeah.
They click play or they hear a playlist or something. That's the experience. So I guess it's expected that Spotify is going to take a different take on this.
But
yeah.
But again, it goes really back to is a visual experience important when you're using a mobile app?
Well, yeah, because you're really not going to be looking at the screen that much, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I think we've seen a lot of companies play around with visual experiences around podcasting, and most of them wind up failing because most people, when they listen to podcasts, aren't looking at their screens. So,
and Spotify's not going to fail because of podcasting.
No.
At all. But, I thought there was a good meme out there the other day that Spotify was congratulating itself for giving its first $100 to content creators. Basically, they pasted their $100 bill on it. It was a meme that it basically saying, Spotify's hardly paying content creators anything.
Right.
So being artists, of course, they're not paying podcasters nothing, but
unless you're a Joe Rogan, and that's a
$100 million check, then
right?
$100 million or whatever the number was. Yeah, good for him. But I think I run by the adage, I don't care how people listen, as long as they listen. I guess I tell my audience in Geek News Central, please don't consume the show in Spotify, because I want that audience to be more. Well, it's not
more connected to the show, right?
It's not evergreen content. They can't come 2 weeks later and listen. They have to be subscribed. Mm-hmm. It's the content I put out is burned in 48 hours. So I want them to know that there's new media there. They get the notification. It's, that there's a new show and they can listen right away versus maybe I'm going to find it tomorrow or next week in Spotify, So to me, that's the big difference there. Now, if people are using Spotify on a regular basis, then maybe they're using it differently. But to me, it's not intuitive at all. And half the time, I can't find podcasts. That's another thing too. On there is like I search for stuff and I can't find it. Then I have to go to Google, and where do I end up on? Hopefully on the podcaster's website, I can subscribe directly there. But
well, Todd, and like we talked about on the Wednesday show, search is becoming more and more important. And you've been talking about search since the beginning of podcasting time.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes, I know. Some things come full circle, Todd, on you, and you were right all along. So, and it's not a surprise, but
wow! Can you guys please put that into your marketing material over at Libsyn?
Right.
Todd's predictions were not a surprise, and us bashing people owning their own RSS feed for years is null and void. You're giggling, but you specifically weren't guilty of that. But I know another Rob that was.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well,
yeah. But I'm teasing you. I'm sorry.
Our hearts are in the right place, Todd. So.
So I guess I'm concerned that. Well, maybe I shouldn't be concerned. Again, it goes back to me saying forever, I don't care how they listen, as long as they listen. But at the same point, I want to make sure that. And I don't know. I just value the ability to be able to be subscribed to a show and know that I can get to that content anytime I want. Yesterday I was in a location yesterday afternoon where there was hardly any internet activity, but still I was being able to play podcasts because they were, they're right there at my fingertips. And maybe I'm old school. Maybe that's not, maybe people got good enough connectivity that they don't have to worry anymore. But the fringe, those of us out here on the fringe of media networks or mobile networks, if you live in New York City, you can stuff on demand anytime because,
Right. And I think that's the point, right? Is it like never before when podcasting started, it was it was necessary to have a download, right? I think those days of requiring a download for a good experience in the podcast listening area is I mean, having a download available is always going to be a good thing.
And maybe the argument,
because there are going to be situations,
Yeah.
but in most situations now, we've all got terrific internet access, and we don't need to download.
and maybe the argument is, maybe it's flip this on its head a little bit. Maybe the Spotify listeners are more engaged because they physically went and had to go find the show, number one,
Right.
and then they had to pick an episode and hit play, versus where me, it's just I load the app and it's there. It's in my subscribe list, and for me, it's a convenience. I don't have to go search.
Yeah.
You know, they're right there in my list. So, So who knows? Oh, and by the way, Merriam-Webster, we're talking about the dictionary.
Ah, yes. I saw your post on
I am
that laugh.
I am vindicated.
Hey, I say the same thing, and it's like I get teased about it too.
I am 100% vindicated. For those of you that don't know, in case you thought 2020 couldn't get any worse, I love this. Merriam-Webster just officially recognized irregardless as a word. I win. I win.
Mignon Fogarty just rolled over in bed.
I win. I win. I win. I had to laugh. I saw that and I was like, oh, you. And people are like, shameful. They're slapping their head. What? My dad is rolling over in his grave. He installed in a disgust for anyone using that word. I win.
Wow.
Michael Baldy. Okay, everyone, calm down. It's extremely useful word. Helps you tell who's a dumbass with almost no effort. That's like the oh so common phrase, I could care less. Douglas Reed. No.
But it sounded so right for so long, Todd, that you willed it to be true.
Kathy Butin, no. P.W. Fenton, regardless of the erroneous decision, I will never use that word. Irregardless, live long and prosper.
It's all because of you.
Absolutely. I win. Because, you guys are laughing here. Rob and I are laughing, but I am the ultimate in destroying the English language. On my show, I've been known to have Toddisms, and people have bashed me for years for using irregardless as a word. That is not a word. Do not say that. Yes, I win. I can't wait to talk about it on my regular show, too. I win.
And Todd, I picked it up from you, and then I started using it, and then I started getting bashed. It's like, what? What?
Yeah.
That word doesn't exist in the Webster's dictionary. I was like, yeah.
So what I did is, okay, so you think about the minions, right? Got the minions back here. It's me as, ha-ha! I'm vindicated! Hooray! So yeah, I saw that, and of course it was from Jamie Lee Curtis. So she was like, saying, "Oh my goodness!" But I love it. How many more words do we have like that in the, minions? She's like, their eyeballs are shimmering.
Wow.
So yes, I had to bring that point forward. Tom Webster says, true story. My ex-wife's name is Miriam. She didn't take my name. Oh, so that must be a comment to something else. So, but I don't know. I just go back and I think what we have is, and maybe I'm just an old curmudgeon and I'm complaining, but there is new perceptions, and I think we just have to kind of live with them.
Right.
With those perceptions, and I'm not here to to browbeat someone to saying, yeah, you need to have people subscribe. That's the only way podcasting works. Well, we've known for a long time that's not the case.
Well, and speaking of another word that came up at the, I don't think you were there, Todd, but the Spreaker had a after hours event. It was like a game that you could play, and one of the people would go through and play and answer the questions, right? And then one of the questions came up is, what year was the word podcast added to the Webster dictionary?
Oh.
Do you remember when that was?
It was either 2005 or 2006.
It was actually 2005.
Ah.
And I think it was only like 20% of people attending the Spreaker social at Podcast Movement got that right.
Wow.
So
what did they all thought much later?
Yeah. I think they thought it was like in the 2010 or something like that. Yeah. It was, well, actually it got added right after Apple added it to iTunes.
Yeah.
Right. So
I still get that too. People said, well, when did you start podcasting? I said 2004, and they're like, it existed then? I'm like, yeah, that's when it started.
Right.
Oh, and then you get this dumbfounded look.
Right.
And I was texting yesterday, and basically it was kind of the same thing, type of thing, a little trivia back and forth, how many podcasts, how many active podcasts, blah, 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 blah. And the person said, I only listened to 2 shows. I said, well, that's good. That's a good start. And and I've actually been listening to more podcasts recently because I've just been trying to unglue myself or, keep myself off the main television sites because it's not healthy right now. The ads are not healthy. So I think this is where I'm running to. I'm running home to Mama for podcasting to be able to fill my brain. And and if we think about back to the beginning of this, Rob, not only were we wanting to make sure that there would be this new way to consume media, but you really could get away from all of these talking heads and listen to real people, share stories and share information, and we can't get away from that. That is an important part of this whole space as well, is it's so unique. And maybe it's not so unique anymore, but I still think we've got something pretty special here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Todd, did you see the listing about some shows that are leaving PRX? Yeah,
I saw that. Well, it's putting your money where your mouth is.
What's a sign of the changing climate of what's happening? I also attended a session at Podcast Movement, the People of Color networking event, and that was very interesting, and a lot of ideas and discussion about how to expand the diversity of the podcasting space. And I think what we're seeing here at PRX shows that are leaving PRX and Radiotopia is because of what is seen as the lack of racial diversity. It's a growing issue in the podcasting space, but it's mainly organizational issues. I don't believe it's a podcasting issue per se. I think the canvas is available to anyone to create whatever they want to create over here. I think it's the opportunity for the professional side, I suppose, is where the issue is.
Do you think that because there hasn't been like a major in-person event for a while, that those new to the space have I don't know if I'm hearing, okay, maybe I'm way ahead of myself here, but are people in that session, did people think that podcasting was still hard to get into for people of color?
Well, I think where the perception is maybe access to money, investments, being a part of larger networks or something like that.
Don't feel bad. They don't give old white guys money either. So
right. Yeah. So I think that's probably where the focus is.
Yeah.
It's more around organizational diversity.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like to see more diversity in the content creation side. And I asked the panel, so they had a discussion panel that was going on there too about this topic. I asked them, well, how can we attract more diversity in the content creation side? I mean, I think we have some already, and there were plenty of that whole event was very, very diverse with content creators and in there. And I challenged the group to, maybe what we should do is start talking about how we can attract more diversity to podcasting, versus pointing fingers. Let's be proactive about this. And this is a challenge that the Podcast Academy has too, is we want to be racially diverse in our governing board. We want to be racially diverse in our membership. We want to be racially diverse in all the shows that are nominated for an award. And speaking of that, the nominations are open at the Podcast Academy, and we open with open arms anybody that wants to submit their show over there. It's not going to be filtered based on racial orientation or anything like that. We're going to look at the best show, but I mean, we are looking for shows from differing communities in the podcasting space, from around the world, from different voices and different perspectives, and I think that's the key takeaway from all this is we as members of this community just need to reach out and attract more diversity to this medium. I don't believe that there's really any barrier other than maybe some perceived barrier to access to money and investment and support, maybe, that unfortunately, as we've seen with PRX, it's seen as a little too white, and it needs to be more diverse.
I think if you look at it from an independent content creator standpoint, let's not talk about budgets, production,
right?
Just pure independence.
Right.
I'm of the, and again, this is not scientific, just based on my observations of who I talk to from day to day. I think that there's one specific group that still continued to be well underrepresented, and that would be black men. Right. I think that group is missing from the, not entirely, but I think they're underrepresented. I think the black women are doing a much better job of, there's much more diversity there, or much more numbers. I guess maybe that's the best way to say it.
Right.
So, but then again, I'm just looking at it black and white. I'm not really looking at it from, we've got more and more diversity in this country between black and white. We've got Asians, we've got Indian, the whole scope, or Native American, maybe that's the more appropriate word to use.
Well, and Todd, too, let's talk about the glass half full. I think we have many terrific black podcast creators in the medium right now, and I think what we need to do is focus on those folks and highlight them. And like Donald Albright, he was a guest on this show just a couple months ago. He's a perfect example, and he's the vice chairman of the Podcast Academy, and he's a perfect example of a black man that's doing terrific work in the podcasting space. And there's others out there too, and we just need to get more involved. And I'm not quite sure how to do that. And I think that there's an equal responsibility there. I think that the black community needs to encourage others to join this medium. But I think it's the responsibility of the medium to make sure that it's a welcoming medium for that too.
Now, one thing too is we worked with BET and some other groups like that, and BET has been trying to, I wouldn't say consolidate, but they've been trying to recognize content in that genre, and I think that they've been that they're in a good position to be able to expose podcasters that maybe haven't been exposed before, but we need to move beyond just, those silos. I guess, I don't know if that's the right word here. But I guess, and also another thing too is oftentimes, if I'm listening to a show, I don't know the diversity makeup of a show. I have no clue. I see a show name, I see a show title. Maybe some references made in the podcast that kind of clues me in, but oftentimes I'm kind of, the faces to me, you know how your brain is when you read a book, you kind of assign faces to content. And it's kind of the same way for me in podcasts, because I listen to so many podcasts that I often, I'm a man or a woman, but maybe sometimes there's something to be said. I'm like, oh, I'll clue in a little bit. But other than that, often hard to really distinguish on an audio podcast the makeup of a show.
Right. And I'm going to invite more diversity in the guests that we have on this show too. Yeah. So I mean, that's I just need to find the folks to do that. So
maybe the audience can help us out too. Because I think it's important if you know someone that's doing a cool show and be worth to have them come on the podcast. Let us, send Rob and I a note. We definitely will invite. Because I made a comment twice during our, and maybe those of you that weren't watching the other night or haven't listened to the episode yet, I made two comments that, Rob, you went out and tried to get some folks on the panel.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't just, four guys. And you had a hard time.
I think it was just for other reasons. The timing of it just didn't work out for
because
some.
It was 7:00 at night, so and 2 hours, and
there's a lot of reasons that things happen with potential guests that they can't make it. So it isn't like I'm going to stop trying, because we do this show in a variety of different days and times. So oftentimes we can make it work at some point.
I do want to switch topics here a little bit. Did you listen to the Mark Cuban keynote?
Yes, I did.
Boy, I tell you, they should have sent him a microphone.
I had the same thought too. He's sitting in his office, and the camera was like way up
high. You can see not a good.
Definitely expected a lot more from Mark on that.
But what did you think of the conversation?
Well, I mean, first of all, he's not a podcaster.
Right. We know that.
And that's not the first time, I've met Mark before, and it's not the first time that he's been a speaker at a podcasting event. I don't know if you remember, Todd, but I think it was 2008, 2007, something like that. I think he was a speaker at the New Media Expo in Vegas. At the Rio, I believe. So, because I went to his session there and talked to him after his speech, but he was very early in the online media space. So, of course, he's always had an affinity towards podcasting. He just hasn't ever done one himself.
Right.
He's been really, if you think about Mark, he's really been a video guy.
Yeah.
If you come right down to it.
So I guess, there was a few takeaways there, and I think it's probably, for those of you that have got the pass, go back and listen to it if you haven't. It was short, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But
all the sessions at Podcast Movement pretty much, except for ours, which was probably a little too long.
Yeah, it was 2 hours. Hey, go large or go home, right?
Right.
If anybody can go for 2 hours, it's us. So what has anything else in Podcast Movement, because I haven't watched all the keynotes. Was there any other keynotes beside Tom Webster's that really stuck out to you?
I was trying to think. It's kind of hard to think of the other ones because Tom's is the one that stood out the most.
Yeah.
As far as as Tom always does, he always puts on a good session. It's that combination of data and humor that Tom has that's pretty powerful. I thought a lot of what he talked about was a little bit, changes people's perceptions a little bit about things. So I think he does a good job of that.
And then So I guess I'm just jumping around here today because I'm not even looking at the news. I should. So what is going to be the process then over at the Podcast Academy for the awards? You guys what are the categories? I don't even know what the categories are if you have that handy or.
Let me see. I'll go to the page and I can actually look at it on the page. Let's see here. I don't have them all memorized. Let's see here. I'm going to be putting on a webinar at some point myself.
So I just clicked on annual awards here. So I've got them listed. I'm sorry.
Yeah. There you go.
So podcast of the year, best documentary, best interview, best comedy, best news, best sports, best true crime, best business, best fiction, best history, best science or tech, best society and culture, best politics, entertainment, personal growth, spirituality podcast, best wellness or relationship podcast, best podcast host. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Is that actually like Libsyn and Blueberry competing for one another?
No, that's actually on microphone, folks.
Oh, okay. Best reporting. Right. So that's okay. Best script writing fiction, best script writing nonfiction, best production and sound design. I think we should win that. Best original score and music supervision, best performer in audio fiction, and a governor's award. Oh, interesting. Yep. So the governor's award is one you guys are going to pick?
Yeah, correct.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, wow, Rob.
Wow.
Wow. The entry
Welcome
fee?
to the award stuff, right?
The entry fee. Oh.
Hey.
I guess I can raise my rates now.
I say go large or go home.
The entry fee for members is $100 and non-members is $175.
I guess it pays to join.
Wow. So what does everybody think about that? That's interesting.
Well,
I know.
With the Academy Awards and stuff like that, I think it's like $600 or $700 to submit.
Academy Awards comes with a much, there's probably $1 million worth of investment for the Academy Awards. But of course, television is.
Well, that opens up a whole other can of worms to talk about too, Todd. Right?
So because they have to do their promotion and PR and everything that goes along with trying to get people to vote.
Right.
Members to vote. So what's going to happen? So is the membership list going to be made public, or is there are people going to that's the next question. Am I going to start getting PR campaigns from the Best History podcast? So please go for them at the Ambies.
I don't know. That's a good question, Todd.
You're being very careful here, Rob, to answer any questions.
I suppose it's possible. I mean, I don't think it's like against the law, but
yeah,
I'd say, you can't really stop people from marketing, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So nominations opened up on October 19th, so just a few days ago. Entry period closes on December 15th. And nominees will be announced in February. We haven't figured out an exact time when we're going to announce the nominees. And then March 28th is the target for having an award ceremony, which will more than likely be a virtual event.
Okay.
So given what's happening in the country right now around group gatherings from around the country right now, it's a little questionable whether or not we're going to be out of this by the end of March.
Yeah.
So probably very low chance that we will be.
So in really, you guys aren't even covering. Well, if you have entry, depends on how many entries you have. That's
what I've heard. There's been quite a few entries already. Just in the first 5 days. Yeah.
Wow.
Many entries already. Yes.
And people are not having a problem paying $100. So that's interesting. So I wonder what's going to happen when I reopen my thing. Of course, ours is 25.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm not, of course, Rob, you guys ought to take that money and, there's a great domain name out there. A couple of them that are probably for sale.
Really?
Yeah, with enough zeros on the end of the check, I'm sure it could be purchased.
Really?
Yeah. but you got to have a lot of zeros.
I think
Were you guys able to secure the ambies.com or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
We did secure ambies.com.
Oh, AMBIES. You're able to get that? That was a weird enough name that.
Exactly. That's the key. It has to be weird enough. Yeah.
That there's no domain name squatter like me.
Yeah.
Huh. So so voting, I'm assuming, just so we're understanding what's going to happen here, you'll have nominees. Have you guys decided how the nominees are going to get picked? Or will they be...
it's going to be picked by the members.
Okay, so the members will vote for the nominees.
Correct.
And then
we're using a third-party awards software platform that's very advanced. It actually, I believe it was used by Adweek's awards that they just did a few weeks ago.
I had one. I've got one built. You guys could have...
now, Todd?
You guys could have talked to me.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, but mine was probably cheaper to build. I think my total build bill was about $12,000 or $13,000. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So then, once the nominees are picked, then the membership will vote again for the winners.
Yeah, correct.
Oh, interesting. So here's wherein lies the challenge, ladies and gentlemen, on any of these types of things.
Yeah.
So
there's always a challenge.
There's always a challenge because it's limited to... So if you have... You can nominate your own show, right? I can nominate my own podcast. I don't have to. And then... So there's no... Interesting. Very interesting, because I would imagine the majority of people that are members are also podcasters.
Right. But it also takes out of the loop the possibility of group activity.
It
on
could,
voting.
though. Well, if you've got 10 people that work at Libsyn and they're all members, 10 people can help sway.
Looking at the membership pool that we have so far, it's like 95% independent producers.
Oh.
And which isn't surprising if you think about it.
Right.
That's fairly representative of the podcasting space.
Yep.
So we don't see large clusters of people in the membership pool yet that from a large company, like let's say all the employees of iHeartRadio join.
Right.
That's not happening at this point. So we don't have any kind of inherent bias like that. And if we did have that happen, we've already kind of built in filters against that.
That's good.
So yeah.
But still then, let's say I go in and register my tech show. I could then start a campaign for members to vote for it too. So, that's completely legal.
Yeah, that's kind of more of a public thing on the outside, right?
On the outside.
So you could do that, I suppose.
Yeah.
But that's only gonna, it's not. The benefits of it are a little bit less because it's a relatively small group of members, right? So putting it out there in an advertisement in a podcast is
right.
only going to have limited
so
benefit.
I'm looking here. Where would this show fit in? It'd be
kind of a tech business podcast.
Yeah, best business podcast. But are we disqualified because of your position? Because it would be a bit of a conflict, I think.
I'm not sure. We haven't really discussed that on the panel. I do think that the very structure of it basically takes any bias out of it.
Okay.
So
not that I would go register this show, but it just
it's a good question for the board to talk about. Can board members nominate? And I believe if you're, let's say you own a network. So let's say I don't think that any of the members of the boards, there's some pretty big podcast networks like iHeartRadio is on the governing board. Should they be excluded from being able to nominate any iHeartRadio podcasts? And I would say no.
So the question then is, all right, I registered, I think I registered as Blueberry. I don't remember. Maybe I registered as my own podcast. I don't remember how I joined.
Well, you join as an individual. You don't join as a company.
Okay, so you join as an individual. So then, technically, being a member, I can nominate any show or multiple shows, as long as I paid $100 per show.
Right.
Okay, I got it. What do you guys think? Should we nominate this show?
and you can nominate the show up to I believe you can nominate up to 3 episodes. So it's an episode.
An episode?
Right.
What?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the weirdest damn thing I've ever heard. 3
well, it's
episodes?
The same thing that the TV or the movies do or whatever is that you nominate a piece of content.
Says production companies
is your best piece of content.
Says production companies, individual producers, creators, and distributors of a podcast series which publish at least 3 episodes during the period January 1 to 21, December 31 are eligible for consideration. But when I submit it, do I have to, let's find this thing here. We'll go find the form. Oh, where is the form?
I think you have to click. It's actually, you have to sign in as a member.
Oh, to see it. Well, I guess I'm going to have to do a forget your password thing.
So.
Huh. Well, we'll see if that was the right one. Your IP has been logged. So you have to log in. So basically, a non-member would have a hard time submitting anything at this point.
Well, you have to join and then submit.
But there says 175 for non-members. So which
right.
way is it?
Right. Yeah.
Well, maybe I found a flaw.
Let's see here. Where is it? Huh. It is interesting that you can't.
Yeah. So I can't remember which email address I logged in under. It'll send me a thing here in a minute.
I'll have to ask the team,
because I was curious to look at the application form,
right,
and see if I have to submit 3 episodes. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
So how do you pick the 3 best episodes that you've done in a year?
That's your 3 best ones.
Yeah. And Tim says, and down the rabbit hole he goes. Hey,
well, I'm chairman of the board.
Yeah.
Chairperson of the board, which means that I run the meetings. It isn't like I make all the decisions.
I know. I understand, but putting Rob on the spot a little bit here.
Right.
But hey, guess what? No one else is talking about it. We got to talk about it. So those of you that are podcasters out there,
right,
want to get involved in this, it'd be pretty awesome to be one of the first shows to win an Ambi.
Right. I mean, I'll invite Michelle, our executive director, to come on the show sometime.
Yeah, that'd be great.
We can dive through this completely.
Yeah.
And then I can invite Hernan Lopez on too, and he can tell us about his process of trying to find a new buyer for his company. So.
I'm going to leave that one right there because we could really get in trouble here real quick.
Really?
I think so. I don't want to. Well, let's leave that one alone.
Really?
Well, what is the motivation?
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Okay. I wasn't sure where you were going with that.
Yeah, it's like, okay. What is the motivation? So anyway, so this is cool. So for those of you listening, you have until December 14th. 15th is the last day.
Right.
To nominate. Now, if you guys think
before Christmas.
If you guys think we should nominate this show and you are a member of the Podcast Academy, Let us know which category you think we should be in. If we think we're supposed to be in the best business category, we'll put it in the best business podcast category. But here's how I'm gonna do this.
I want it to be in the best fiction podcast.
Oh, okay. If we don't get donations, if you don't donate to the show,
right.
And I'll tell you right away when we reach $100, if we don't get donations to the show, we won't register it. So you guys decide if we should register to the show.
I know the right category for us.
Oh, really?
The best opinion podcast.
Oh, which one is that?
It's the best politics and opinion podcast.
Oh, there you go. But we're not that's going to be a hard category to win.
I know.
Yeah, we need to go back to the best business podcast. We got a better shot of winning that.
Or
one.
best host. No, best reporting podcast.
Oh, that could work too, but that'll be another tough one. That'll be news related. But yeah, we potentially could.
Best knowledge, science, and tech podcast.
Yeah. So you guys let us know. I'll put a link to the Ambies in the show notes. Again, the only way I'm registering this show for the Ambies is if those of you from today forward donate to the show via the link on the website, and we raise enough money to register the show for the Ambies. If you don't think we're, we're going to make the audience, if we're not worthy, if they don't think that we're worthy, we won't, because that means they won't vote for us anyway if they're parts of the podcast. Is everyone listening to this show part of the Podcast Academy?
My guess is probably not.
No, because I know if we would have, you guys would have been like funded for the next year. So the question I have for those of you that listen to the show, why are you not a member of the Podcast Academy? And I'm serious. Why are you not? And we want to tell Rob and I why you're not, because Rob wants to know. He can take that back to the Board of Governors and say, this is why people are not registering for the Podcast Academy. It was $50. Now it's $100. So it's going to cost you more if I made you feel guilty.
Well, and we're adding 3 more board members to the board, and I'm going to be stepping down from being chairperson in January.
Oh.
So,
did you guys already vote, or how does that work?
That's going to be done in January.
Well, that will probably be done by the membership, or I'm assuming
by the Board of Governors.
Oh, so the membership doesn't get to vote on the Board of Governors.
Well, actually, that's a good point. I think the membership is going to vote.
Interesting.
Actually.
Huh.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, so you've been I thought you were going to have this gig for 2 years.
Well, I'm going to be on the board for 2 years. I'm just this was just a temporary stint to get the organization off the ground, and then it was going to be put out to a much bigger vote on who was going to, in the hopes of having an officers list that was had better representation from, in all the ways that everybody would like these days.
Okay. I'm going to leave that one alone. Tim says, I'm not eligible. Yes, it's your fault, Tim. It's your fault for not doing your show and being the biggest procrastinator on the planet.
Todd, are you doing like what Adam Curry does on his show? Are you shaming our audience?
I'm shaming Tim because Tim and I are friends, and I've drank beer with him, so I can shame Tim. and Tim is a retired firefighter from California, a distinguished firefighter, fire captain.
Wow.
He travels around and he camps out in the back of. He's got one of those ones that goes on the back of the pickup.
Mm-hmm.
And he has all kinds of fantastic stories. Whenever we get together, all we do is he tells us stories, and he would make a great podcaster. But he'll have to take a picture of it and put it in his in the Facebook page. But he's actually got a business card that is related to his procrastination of podcasting. So yes, Timothy, irregardless, you need to get busy.
Oh, no. Webster has empowered Todd.
Oh my God!
Irregardless.
It's hilarious. And do I really care if someone says you don't know how to speak English? Well, according to Merriam-Webster, I sure do.
Todd, Todd, you've been renewed in your vigor.
There was another company that I got wrong all the time. From the early years, I called Symantec. S-Y-M, Symatech, instead of Semantic. So I drove them crazy. And I often did it on purpose, pronounce it incorrectly, just to trigger the audience just a little bit.
Todd, you're creating a whole new dialect of English.
That's why they call them Toddisms.
Toddisms.
We're being
Todd, did you see that the iVox folks had an audience awards that got announced, and their winners got announced?
Who?
The iVox from Spain. It's a podcast and live streaming listening. It's the biggest one in Spain.
Wow.
They announced their winners, 2020. It's the third edition of the iVox Audience Awards. So there's not that many categories. They only had like present and society, wellness and family, science and culture, sports, business and technology, history and belief, music, entertainment, and that's it.
Awesome. Hey, one thing that I'll mention is we have, from time to time, we have guests on.
Yep.
And both James and Brian, who were with us on Wednesday, sent us thank you notes. So I just want to thank both James and Brian for sending the thank you notes. That doesn't always happen. I definitely appreciate your follow-up. And Brian, I agree with you. We didn't get to dive into privacy too much, but we've done a lot of that on this show. So maybe at some point down the road, we can have you back on, and when we're ready to do, maybe we'll wait till something erroneous happens. Is that a word? Erroneous happens.
If it's not, you just
made it right. Something erroneous happens, and we'll have you on, and we'll talk about privacy.
Right.
And
I mean, it's a pretty lengthy topic, so having that's almost like a separate show. I did have it on the agenda list, but we just didn't get to it.
Yeah.
Even in 2 hours, we didn't get to it.
So James, what did he say? He said, James says, I think you got better answers from Brian. I think, James, you did a good job. I think you had great answers to the stuff. I think we had a good dialogue. So,
especially for a guy that didn't have power or internet access.
That was remarkable. Did you see he posted a picture later of the electric trucks outside his house, and he said he had basically used every device. He'd run out of power in because he had another live event. He was down to his Chromebook, and he got through his live events with no power.
Yeah, I think he was doing a panel at Rain Eurasia, I think is what he was doing. And that panel had
eight people or something on it.
Eight people on it or something like that. It's like
one question each.
Yeah, right. Right. But I appreciate James posting a screenshot of our live event on the newsletter that came out.
That's right.
I think, I don't know if you saw it or not, but it came out on the 22nd, I guess, which was Thursday.
And we did get good coverage from Podcast Business Journal as well. So thank the team over there for promoting it. And of course, again, big thanks to Dan and his team for letting us have 2 hours on a Wednesday night.
Yeah, and our event was pretty much the only event that was going on that night.
Right.
So it was like an after-hours special event. So I went to the iHeartRadio after-hours event. I don't know if you did that too.
I have not been going to
Connell and Will from iHeart, from the Stuffworks folks.
Right.
And they did a terrific session talking about podcast creative, talking to new podcasters, talking about how they created their shows. And, it was almost like a pitch session to Connell and Will pitching new shows and new show ideas. It was really interesting to hear people come up with like a slide deck to present their shows to them.
Who did you say was the ones that were doing that? It was
Connell, who's the head of podcasting for Stuff Media that's owned by iHeartRadio.
Yeah.
So Con O'Brien and I think it's Will Williamson, I believe, who's kind of like the head of content production at Stuff Media.
Okay.
So both of them did it was like a 2 or 3 hour live, workshop from USC in LA. So it was themed as something that I guess that iHeart's been doing with the USC student base for a while to come up with new show ideas.
So I do want to talk. Go ahead.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting what he did there. I thought it was, very insightful around, the creation process of a new podcast.
Insider doesn't like it when you have a ad blocker. They wouldn't even let me get access to it. And then always give me 25 pop-ups. No, I don't want to give you $1 a month. This headline, if you are a podcaster, we talked a little bit about it on the show, but we didn't really go too much into it on Wednesday. Mm-hmm. But I think we should. Spotify banned 4 podcasts associated with QAnon conspiracy theory on Monday, leaving the movement with few places to turn. I think that's a little unfair because those shows are still online. A Friday report from Media Matters for America, a progressive nonprofit, tracks online misinformation. Conservative media revealed that QAnon influencers are still posting on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Vimeo after a wave of bans on other platforms, mostly notable Facebook. QAnon is a baseless, according to them, far-right conspiracy theory that claims the president is secretly fighting a deep state cabal of human traffickers. I thought it had something to do with a dead Kennedy, but I guess it's human traffickers. The movement has been linked to several crimes, and the FBI has characterized it as a potential domestic terrorism threat. As QAnon has grown in popularity this year, tech companies are finally taking action on the conspiracy theory. So you don't have someone talking about hate. You don't have someone that is threatening someone. If I take the basis of this article and understand that it's QAnon is something to do about human traffickers, that is interesting. So none of us like human traffickers.
Right.
And, okay, so that's QAnon. What about the old Art Bell shows talking about UFOs? And what about George Norrie and the conspiracy theories he brings on his show? And what about the hundreds of other podcasts that talk a lot of conspiracy theories? Are they now subject to banning from platforms because, quote unquote, people can't understand the difference between a show talking about something? I'm really disturbed about this. I don't know anything about QAnon. I could care less.
Well, it's linked up to politics here, and that's what the difference is.
Okay, so
if you look at what George Norrie has done and all that stuff, it's mainly around conspiracies around UFOs.
But it's still conspiracies. So
like
regardless if it's political,
but it's not politics, right?
Well, there's been politics about JFK getting shot. There's been conspiracies for 30, 40 years on John F. Kennedy's assassination.
Yeah, but the QAnon conspiracy is claiming that Democrats are human traffickers. That's the premise behind it. So you're getting into areas which are political too, and they're making accusations against a certain group of people based on a political agenda, and that's where it kind of I think it crosses a line. Talking about UFOs or things like that isn't typically linked up with politics. Right?
But here you've got another company that is now censoring and doing editorial control.
Right.
And this is a slippery slope for them because in the United States, they're still protected under Section 230 of the...
That is true.
So
that is true. There is freedom of speech, but if that freedom of speech is causing harm in the world, I don't know that conspiracy theories around around UFOs is causing anybody any
But
harm.
is QAnon causing harm?
Well, we're getting into politics.
Yeah, I know, but it's a conspiracy theory. They're talking. Are they?
There were people that were taking guns into part of, anyway, and people got arrested because people were resorting to violence in reaction to this QAnon thing.
I've heard none of that. Of course, I've been not listening to the news, but again,
yeah, there's certain people out there that react to this stuff in a negative way and take action in the real world. Right.
So Spotify says that it prohibits content on the platform, promotes, advocates, or incites violence against others. So they seem to think that this type of content was inciting violence.
Well, there was an incident that happened in Washington, D.C. at a pizza joint that was linked up with this conspiracy, where a guy walked into the pizza joint with a gun and was going to find those Democrats in the back and was going to shoot them. And he got arrested. The FBI had to go in and arrest this guy. So that's unfortunate what happens in this area.
But were these specific shows actually promoting violence? And
probably not. It's just the conspiracy theory that's going on, that's cycling around, is creating this.
Yeah, we get
this division between people, and people are angry.
It's a very thin line. So what happens when they start removing shows that talks about Hunter Biden? When do they start removing shows like Facebook or content like Facebook and Twitter has done? That hasn't happened yet, but the censorship thing is to me, a very thin line here. And again, I don't know enough about it.
I agree with you. You start getting into things like that, the Hunter Biden thing, and it's hard to make that direct connection that there's some person that could be harmed in the provocation
and just for the record, we don't know of any Spotify doing this with any political show. So I just want to be clear on that.
And I think it's typically, this happens typically around things that can cause people to, incite violence against others. And that's typically where we're seeing this happen. I think we saw it with Alex Jones.
Yeah.
There was a certain amount of that going on. And I've heard him, threaten people in ways that it's hard even to explain and imagine that someone even think that. He's a sick young man, old man.
So QAnon content has been banned on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, and Pinterest, and Triller. Right. So Apple hasn't removed these shows, I am assuming.
Yeah, I don't think everybody is going to have the same approach to this, right? Everybody has a different, terms of service.
So again, it just, I guess I need to hear the content, and understand their rationale for doing this.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of unhealthy things going on in the country right now. So,
well, I think, to be quite frank, I think the unhealthiness, a lot of stuff that's unhealthy in the country has been largely driven by the mainstream media, but that's my opinion. I know I feel much more healthy when I don't watch.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on how you think it. If the mainstream media is bringing attention to it, then yeah, I would tend to agree with you.
No, I think the mainstream media is orchestrating much of the mental health issues in this country by the content that they produce and stuff that they do and do not talk about. So they're no longer news. That's the thing. The mainstream media is no longer news. They're political organizations. So it doesn't matter if you're Fox, CNN, MSNBC, CNBC, doesn't matter. They are no longer news organizations. They are political organizations. And someday maybe they'll start reporting news again.
Well, I think at the end of the day, it gets back to what are people paying attention to? Right?
Yeah.
What do, news has been heading towards entertainment for a long time, right? And that's what we're really talking about here is news and content online.
Yeah.
Content and broadcast is those news organizations are now part of entertainment organizations.
Right.
Right. So that shift has been happening a long time.
But I think
that.
But I think
this is the ultimate destination.
Yeah, I think the shift though went from entertainment to now political activism. That's what is going on in news today. And it doesn't matter if you're right, left, down the center. There's a station for you.
Right. And somewhere in all this is the truth.
Well, you're not going to hear it on mainstream media. I think that you're going to start.
Where are you going to hear it?
I think podcasts are what is that? Just let me use a Star Trek, and I'm going to get bashed here because I'm not a Trekkie. The final frontier or whatever. I think the podcast space is the final frontier for truth.
Right. What are the facts and what are the truth?
At least Todd's truth and Rob's truth. And
I mean, if we can't agree on truths and facts, then we're never going to agree.
But at the same time, it's become very if you watch a Social Experience on Netflix, we are in a time and a place where I don't think I'm sophisticated enough as an individual to sway someone's to change their lifestyle. I don't think me as an individual, I may be able to provide information.
Change someone's opinion about something? Is that what you mean?
Not necessarily opinion, but you know what we really had, and again, I guess the what I see is that my show is not enough to make someone go out and setting burning barrels in the middle of the street or something to that effect. They're not going to go out and protest because something I have said. At least I don't think so. Right. But I think mainstream media has, on both sides, caused people to go out and want to burn burning barrels in the middle of the street. I'm just using that as an example. But I think the average person, we're all pretty, we all get up in the morning and brush our teeth and use the restroom and take a shower and put our pants on the same. I think we're all pretty level. If you go from household to household in America, it's, the same routine. And I think in the surface of things, people that are creating content are trying to be pretty thoughtful in what they create in podcasts because their reputation is really at stake.
Right.
Now, you're going to have people that are going to do super hardcore right-left shows. That's going to be still out there. But I think for the most part, there's not like this big agenda. I feel the mainstream media has an agenda. In other words, and that's why I said there are political parties now. They're not, or they're extensions of political parties.
They're extensions of an interpretation,
right,
of what is perceived as a reality.
And I think they try to drive people's perceptions and make them. They have enough influence still. I think that they're trying. I think they are very successful in driving. Well,
I mean, let's get up at the 60,000-foot view on this. We live in a kind of like a polarized orientation in our society, right? There's left, right. There's blue, red. There's Democrat, Republican. We live in a binary. That might be the best way of saying it. We live in a binary world, right? Even digital, what we're doing on the internet right now is basically we're streaming a bunch of ones and zeros, right?
Right.
Ones and zeros. So everything is binary in their choices. And that's what we see in our world. There's males, females. There's, the whole fabric of our existence is based on binary orientation.
Well, it's male, female, other. So let's speak.
Well, now it is because we've branched out into other ways of looking at things, and that's what's complicated things. Is that binary choice is how our political system is set up. It's how our societal structure is set up, and I think that these things have existed since the beginning of time. These binary choices. It's just now we've thrown into the mix the internet, and then we talked about the social dilemma, and which is like gasoline on the fire,
Mm-hmm.
right? Of people's ability to interpret things and express different views of reality. And that's what I think that's what we're seeing is kind of like a grouping of ideas in these different binary media that are grouping ideas based on a growing consolidated view, which is also, you have to think about it too. There's also, I believe, a growing the power of the minority to influence the majority too. I think if you really think about that, I think you'll understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, of course.
Is that the internet has empowered a small group of people to have major impact on a large group of people.
And while I didn't want to go down too deep in this,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, based upon the podcast I listen to, I hear level-headed,
Right.
intelligent conversations.
Yeah.
And
it's like what we're having here, Todd.
Right.
I mean, these are observational discussions about what's happening in our world, and there is application in the podcasting world to what's happening here.
And I guess I'm super sensitive when I hear the word ban, removed.
I don't like it either.
I get very uncomfortable.
Right. Both of us are definitely free speech advocates. I mean, I'm with you 100%.
Because what happens when the fringe is silence? And maybe the fringe is right. What happens when they ban a far left or far right group or a show of color or whatever it may be? The media has had way too much influence and has had way too much control of the message that we hear throughout the world. And that's been part of the reason the success of podcasting is because
We've kind of broke that mold.
Yeah, no one can be told, no, you can't be heard.
Right.
That's and true. I think, go back to the core of this whole thing, I think that's why it excites me so much to see the diversity in content. But at the same time, I'm just, as an individual, me, as Todd, I can't handle to watch the news. I can't. My blood pressure goes up. My anxiety goes up. My mental health, because you get fucking pissed.
Well, so Todd, where do you get your news from if you're not, is it online in articles and stuff?
No,
is that what you're...
And that's even worse.
But I know, but
so now,
all of us as good citizens need to be informed, right?
Yeah, so
how do we stay informed in a world that we're basically pulling ourselves out of?
Well, the problem is I'm tired of being influenced by biases of somebody with a suit and some corporate headquarters that has an agenda for content. So where do I find, believe it or not, I find out all kinds of stuff on lots of podcasts that cover stuff that you will never hear on the news. You want to listen, believe it or not, listen to some international news. You might be shocked what they're saying out there. So I don't know. I think our mainstream media is incredibly broken and incredibly decisive, and podcasting, I think at this point, is not.
Right. No, I agree with you.
It's not.
It's still a mostly pure medium.
So
for free expression and a diversity of topics and diversity of access too.
You used to be able to just talk to your neighbors or be at a party and be able to talk to stuff civilly.
And you can't do that now.
No,
right?
No.
Right? That's the other part.
You wear the wrong sticker on your body or a hat or something, and the next thing you know, it's blowing up on the internet because someone has gotten someone's face. So
I think we've fast tracked the society's engagement on the internet too because of this COVID thing.
Right.
People, this is their social interaction is what they're doing on the internet now.
Yep. So I think we all can be very plain here now without getting political. I think we know that a lot of Republicans are in hiding, because of the abuse that's being portrayed upon them And maybe it's the other way too. But I think that's kind of a, if you look at the reality of it. So, what is that? What happens when you cause a portion of the society to be silenced? It's very scary. So that's why podcasts, I believe, still are a medium that you can listen to a variety of content and have diversified thoughts and hear a rational conversation that may or may not change your opinion on something.
I hear a lot of people say that YouTube, to some degree, is still pretty open.
I think so too.
Right.
Yeah. I don't see too much. I'm subscribed. Well, right now I'm watching a lot of yachting shows for some reason, but maybe it's because of COVID and my desire to travel again. But YouTube is not. Every once in a while, there's a couple of folks I follow that get political, but I think they're also very, very cautious.
Right.
They got 6-7 million subs, and they're going to go. They have a chance there, but I think also pushing boundaries and saying stuff at times is good in a respectful way and making a point without screaming. Why are you doing this, or why are you doing that, or why are you and having that conversation and having that exposed to it is good versus what we have on mainstream media today. So I think YouTube and podcasts are probably good outlets for people to. Yeah. And there's some stuff that we all watch. We're like, where the heck did that person come from? You're like, really?
Yeah.
But,
and there is this line between accusation and truth, right?
Right.
And that somehow gets blurred too.
Yeah.
People perceive accusation as guilt.
Yeah.
And that's not always the case, and that's where a lot of this conflict comes from. Is people are saying somebody did something wrong on one side, and the other side defends it, says, "Well, that's not confirmed, or that's not real," or So that's where the bickering comes into play, right?
And I think too is one person's facts are another person's that's not true. And I think that's what you're going to run into now more and more as Facebook and these other groups are employing quote unquote independent groups to fact check stuff. Again, there's so much room for. I'm really, we're on Facebook Live. I said something the other night about Facebook on my other show, and the show went silent for about 2 minutes. People couldn't get the broadcast anymore on Facebook. And after I got off that subject, so I'm not saying Facebook censored me, but it was awful suspicious that, I was.
You have an algorithm listening.
Yeah, because I was talking about MZ. I'm not going to say his name because maybe there is a logarithm that is watching the show. But I was talking about MZ and some of the actions that they'd taken. I'm very untrustworthy of. Everyone should be untrustworthy of these, not only mainstream media, but what we're being exposed to on Facebook. And we're on Facebook right now. We got people watching us, but do you guys trust stuff that you see on Facebook now? Do you feel there's a bias, a filtering going on? And, I think some people would say yes, but I might be wrong.
I don't know about Utah, but I go through stretches of time on Facebook where I just don't see very many posts on Facebook. I don't know if it's because, as far as showing up in my linking timeline, right, that talks about, posts or whatever that my friends make.
Right.
And it makes me wonder if that is the algorithm saying, well, those people aren't paying to have their post promoted, so they're not going to show up in my visibility list.
No, I think a lot of it is if I'm in the Facebook podcast groups a lot, I get a lot of podcast content. And I do too. Right. And for 10 days, I took a Facebook break, and I came back, and I wasn't getting any any podcast stuff. I had to go to those groups. So they changed the logarithm. I was getting more, and believe it or not, I was getting more political stuff. So I kept sleeping people, getting a 30-day break. because I just really don't want to even
they
engage.
would disappear from your timeline, right?
Yeah, so they, they're going to be they're still friends, but until this insanity is over, whenever it's going to be a month from now, I just need to have. I don't need that in my life. It's a distraction for me, and
right. It's the personalization paradigm, right? Is that the more you consume of a particular topic or area, the Facebook feeds
you more, right?
Right, and that's instead of giving you access to a diversity of topics,
right? They feed me one line.
They basically are by that personalization algorithm. They're basically causing people to have extreme perspectives on things because they're going to drive that same topic to you. In your timeline.
And when you silence Republicans and Democrats in your timeline, then Facebook gets really confused.
Because you're supposed to be on one side or the other.
That's right. You're supposed to be one way or the other. Right. And I think most of us are pretty much down the middle. I don't think there's very many people left in this world that are like way over here or way over there. But at least
I just want the truth of what's going on. That's all I want.
Yeah. Rob, you can't handle the truth.
I can handle it. I just want to know that what I've heard is.
And that's the problem, though.
Right.
There's arbiters of truth now, and it's their version of truth.
Versions of truth. That's the problem.
It's true, and so yeah, I think podcasts are for people like me right now. I think podcasts are a great place to hang out until after the election's over, and maybe through the first of the year.
I don't think that the election will ever be over entirely, Todd. If you think about it from a broad perspective of it's going to be division in this country, it's going to continue being a knockdown, drag out, right?
Yeah. No matter who wins, it's going to be a knockdown, drag out.
Right, that's going to continue because both sides are still going to hammer the other side.
Fire them all. That's my opinion. Right. Fire them all. Hey, hang on a second. Hello? Sound like someone came into the office.
We're at the bottom of the hour already.
Wow, Todd. We made it to 90 minutes. We didn't get too political on you, did we, everyone? We didn't lose everybody.
But right. I think we went there where we shouldn't.
Well, I think we're, to be honest with you, I think we all see it.
Yeah.
But with COVID and everything that's went on and the stresses with that, I'll just admit it. It was not good for my mental health.
Right.
It wasn't good. And in taking 10 days off social media and being away from the news.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And so people say, Todd, you need a shrink. I don't need a shrink. I just, what's the best word for this? I know what's wrong and I adjust.
Right.
For myself.
One good thing that's happening out there about all this is that more people are voting than ever before. I think we've already had like 50 million votes already, and the election isn't even here yet.
Yeah. So that tells you something, right?
It does. It does.
I'm going to go to the polls and vote. I'll go vote on election day. And
yeah, I've already sent my ballot in already.
So I live in a small, the place that we vote is a mile from my house, and it's on a paved road, but there'll probably be 3 people there when I show up.
Yeah, so. But definitely vote. Get out there and do it.
Yeah.
Don't unfortunately, in some parts of the country, you have to wait in big long lines.
Yeah.
But,
I think that's the
so
case. So
bring your folding chair and bring some water and some food,
and
sitting there
and listen to your favorite podcast and new media show.
Right. Bring your headphones with you, or your earpods.
That's right. Your earballs. Bring your earballs to the show.
Right.
All right. I'm Todd at Blueberry Todd at Blueberry.com. At Geek News is my Twitter address.
I can be found on Twitter as well at Rob Greenlee, and that's with 4 E's. And I can also be reached on email if you want to, robg@libsyn.com, LIBSYN.com.
And blueberry with no E's. You've got the E's, Rob.
Okay. Thanks for all the E's, Todd.
So we'll be back here on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, and for another engaging new media show.
Right.
So everyone, thanks for being here.
No guests planned for next Wednesday. There's just going to be Todd and I talking politics.
Yep, absolutely. We set up a debate, get a debate moderator going on here.
Right.
How can they ask questions that aren't political? So
that's true. That is a magical question. Yes.
All right, everyone. Take care. We'll see you next time.
Bye.